I stood there, sweat trickling down the back of my neck, staring out into a sea of thousands of faces, as the dean's voice boomed through the speakers. And in that moment, I realized my parents were about to discover the secret I'd been hiding for 4 years. And there'd be no going back. My name's Jessica Carter, and if someone told me that my college graduation would turn into the day I'd serve the sweetest revenge, I would have called them crazy. I'm 24 years old, born and raised in Sacramento, California, in a 2-story house that looked picture perfect from the outside. White fence, manicured lawn, neighbors who waved hello like we were living in some commercial for suburban bliss. But the truth is, perfection can be a damn good disguise. Growing up, my parents, Mark and Linda Carter, both worked government jobs, my dad at the IRS, my mom as a high school English teacher. We were the definition of middle class. Not rich, but never worrying if the lights would stay on. And then there was my little sister, Chloe, 2 years younger, but somehow always miles ahead in our parents' eyes. She had those soft honey blonde curls, perfect grades, this magnetic charm that just pulled people in. Like gravity. Meanwhile, there was me, messy dark hair, smudged paint on my fingers, obsessed with digital art and business ideas my parents liked to call cute little hobbies. From the outside, people saw 2 sisters living a normal life. But inside that house, there was a divide so wide. I sometimes wondered if my parents and I were even speaking the same language. Every Christmas told the story loud and clear. I'd unwrap a plastic set of colored pencils from the dollar store, while Chloe shrieked with joy over her brand new iPad Pro. Mom would say, "Chloe just needs the right tools for her future." Like my future didn't even exist. And the older we got, the clearer it became. My parents saw Chloe as the safe investment, the golden ticket, and me, I was the wild card. The risk, the one who'd probably end up broke and needing to move back home. So when Chloe and I both got accepted into Berkeley, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was the moment everything would finally be equal. But I had no idea. The real storm was still coming. Back when we were kids, people used to say my sister and I were so lucky to grow up in the Carter family. From the outside, it looked that way. The birthday parties with color-coordinated balloons, the framed family photos lining the hallway, all of us beaming fake smiles and matching sweaters. But if you'd looked closer, you'd have seen the cracks. Because in our house, love felt like a competition, and I was losing. Chloe, with her perfect report cards and those big hazel eyes, could do no wrong. By 3rd grade, she was already in advanced programs. Mom beamed at every parent-teacher conference, calling her our little future senator. Meanwhile, I'd be scribbling designs in my notebook, dreaming up logos, websites, entire businesses in my head. But every time I showed my sketches, Dad would laugh under his breath and say, "Art's nice, Jess, but it doesn't pay the bills." I started hiding my drawings, stuffing my sketchbooks under my mattress like they were secrets to be ashamed of. Even at Christmas, the gap was impossible to ignore. Chloe tore into presents, brand name clothes, the latest gadgets, while I'd hold a box of Crayola-colored pencils, bought from the discount aisle at the dollar store. Mom would put her arm around me and whisper, "Chloe just needs more tools to help her shine." And I'd stand there, trying to convince myself that crayons were enough to build an entire future. By middle school, Chloe was the star of every science fair. Mom and Dad would take off work, helping her build elaborate projects with circuit boards and blinking lights. Me, I painted a giant mural for the art show. Mom popped in for 15 minutes, snapped a photo, and said, "It's pretty, but don't get your hopes up. Art won't get you anywhere." Sometimes I felt invisible, except for the nights when I'd stay up late. my little desk lamp burning while I tried to teach myself Photoshop and basic coding on a beat-up old laptop. I started reading business blogs, watching YouTube tutorials about marketing, soaking up every scrap of knowledge like it was oxygen. Part of me believed, if I just worked hard enough, maybe they'd finally see me. But it always circled back to Chloe. Chloe, who was chosen for the state debate team. Chloe, who got special tutoring sessions. Chloe, whose teachers called home just to rave about her potential. And every time she achieved something new, Dad would toast her at dinner, raising his glass of Diet Coke and proclaiming, "To Chloe, our pride and joy." Meanwhile, my achievements were brushed off like lint on a jacket. Even when I won first place in a regional digital art contest, Mom glanced up from folding laundry and said, "That's sweet, Jess. Now don't forget to help Chloe with her English essay." The message was crystal clear. My sister was the investment. I was the spare change. And a tiny voice inside me kept whispering, "Maybe they're right." But even when I tried to silence it, a bigger part of me kept screaming, "No, I'll show them who I really am." The day both our acceptance letters arrived felt like a miracle waiting to happen. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, fingers trembling, tearing open that thick envelope from Berkeley Business School. I'd worked for this. The sleepless nights, the endless competitions, the moments I nearly gave up because no one seemed to care. When I saw the word congratulations, I burst out, "I got in." Dad barely looked up from his phone. "That's good, Jess." Seconds later, the front door slammed open. Chloe came flying in, waving her envelope above her head like a trophy. I got into Berkeley too, political science program. Suddenly, everything changed. Mom screamed, "I knew you could do it." Dad jumped from his chair, grabbing Chloe in a bear hug so fierce he nearly knocked over a glass of iced tea. Within minutes, they popped open sparkling apple cider, blasting music, planning a celebration dinner. Meanwhile, my acceptance letter sat on the table, getting damp from a ring of condensation under Dad's glass. I kept telling myself, "It's fine. They'll come around." But deep down, I felt something shift. 2 weeks later, we sat down for family dinner. Plates of meatloaf and green beans steaming between us. For once, no phones in sight. Dad cleared his throat, fingers laced together on the table. "We need to talk about college." I held my breath, waiting. He kept his eyes locked on Chloe. "Your mother and I have been saving since you were born, and we can cover Berkeley for you. You'll be able to focus fully on your studies." Chloe's eyes went wide with surprise and relief, and then the silence fell. Stretching so long, I felt like I might choke on it. "Finally," I whispered. "What about me?" Dad blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Jessica, we only have enough for one tuition. Chloe's always shown more promise academically. We believe investing in her will yield better returns." Better returns? The words rattled around in my skull, like coins dropped into an empty jar. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand gently, as if that might soften the blow. "You're independent, Jess. You've always been resourceful. You can take out loans, maybe community college for a while." I felt my world splitting open. I'd carried a 4.0 GPA, worked part-time through high school, won competitions no one even asked me about. Yet none of it mattered. All they saw was Chloe the golden child. Dad's voice cut through my thoughts. "Your business ideas, they're risky at best. Chloe has a clear career path." My chest tightened so hard I could barely get words out. "You never even asked me what my plans were." But the conversation was over before it began. Mom stared at her plate. Dad unfolded his napkin and wiped invisible crumbs off the table. Chloe looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. That night, I lay in my bed, staring up at the ceiling, feeling the whole world pressing down on my chest. How could I fight for a future when even my own parents decided I wasn't worth the bet. But somewhere in the silence, a spark flared inside me. I'll go anyway. Even if it kills me, I'll go, and I'll prove them all wrong. I packed my entire life into 3 battered suitcases, threw them into the back of my old Honda Civic, and drove toward Berkeley, refusing to look back. While Chloe settled into a gorgeous dorm overlooking the campus gardens, I moved into a cramped studio apartment off Telegraph Avenue, paint peeling off the walls, the heater rattling like it might explode. But I didn't care. I was there! Classes started, and my days turned into a blur of textbooks, lectures, and 10-hour shifts behind the espresso machine at a coffee shop 2 blocks from campus. The hiss of steaming milk, the screech of the grinder, the constant shout of next customer, all mixed with the chaos swirling in my head. Most nights, I'd drag myself home, my feet aching so bad I'd collapse on the squeaky futon, still wearing my green apron. But as exhausted as I was, I couldn't shut off the ideas pulsing through my brain, because I'd been secretly working on something, late at night, with my laptop balanced on a stack of milk crates. I taught myself everything I could about digital marketing, SEO, conversion rates, sales funnels, building online stores, and then I stumbled onto NFTs. Digital art turned into assets people actually paid real money for. It felt like the universe whispering, "This is your lane, Jess." So I started sketching designs, neon-colored animals, futuristic cityscapes, abstract portraits full of emotion. Every pixel was a piece of my heart. I spent weeks figuring out how to mint my art on OpenSea, cursing gas fees, crashing forums to beg strangers for advice. Sometimes I'd be working on designs with one hand and pouring lattes with the other. My eyes burned from lack of sleep. But it was worth it, because I kept picturing the look on my parents' faces. The day I'd show them I wasn't some hopeless dreamer. And even as money stayed impossibly tight, I refused to quit. One Saturday morning, after a brutal 6 a.m. shift, I dragged myself to Professor Ellen Brooks's office hours. She was my digital business strategy professor. Sharp, no nonsense, with a fire in her eyes, like she'd seen every hustle in the book. I showed her my NFT sketches, my makeshift website, and my business plan scribbled across crumpled notebook pages. She leaned back in her chair, studying my work, then said, "Jess, you're sitting on a gold mine, but you need to think bigger." Her words lit me up like Christmas lights, so I kept going. I stayed up till dawn rewriting my business strategy. I started cold emailing collectors, influencers, anyone who might even glance at my work. When people said no, I emailed 10 more. Sometimes I'd cry into my pillow at night, wondering if I was completely delusional. But every time I wanted to give up, I'd remember Dad's voice saying, "Your business ideas, they're risky at best." And I'd grit my teeth and work even harder, because I wasn't just chasing money. I was chasing proof that I mattered. Proof that I wasn't some footnote in my own family story. Then, one night around 3 a.m, my phone buzzed with a notification that nearly stopped my heart. Someone had just bought one of my NFT pieces for $10,000. I blinked at the screen, convinced I was hallucinating. $10,000. I remember covering my mouth with both hands, sitting there trembling as tears spilled down my face. All those nights working till dawn, all those whispered doubts, suddenly felt like they'd been worth it. Within a month, my entire NFT collection sold out. Total sales, over $500,000. $500,000, earned pixel by pixel, in a tiny studio apartment with broken blinds and a heater that clanged like a tin drum. I paid off my student loans. I upgraded my beat-up laptop. I even put a deposit down on a bigger place closer to campus, with actual sunlight streaming through the windows. But I didn't stop there. Professor Brooks encouraged me to take the momentum and push further. So I built a small agency, combining digital art, NFT consulting, and social media marketing for small businesses looking to break into Web3. Clients started trickling in, then flooding in. Local coffee shops, fitness studios, even a real estate firm wanting custom NFT designs for virtual property tours. And one morning, I woke up to an email from Forbes. They wanted to feature me in their 30 under 30 list, under digital art and entrepreneurship. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to process it. Meet Jessica Carter, the girl who used to cry herself to sleep because she thought crayons were all she'd ever deserve. Now people were calling me a visionary, a trailblazer, a self-made digital entrepreneur. But the craziest part was my parents didn't know. Not a single word, because despite the headlines, I'd kept my success under wraps. I guess part of me wanted them to finally see me for who I'd become. Not because I shoved it in their faces, but because they stumbled upon it themselves. And as if the universe was on my side, Professor Brooks pulled me aside after class one day, her eyes sparkling. "Jess, the university wants you to deliver the commencement speech this year." My jaw dropped. They know your story, your hustle, and how you built your future from scratch. They want you to represent what this school stands for. It was like every puzzle piece was snapping into place. And deep down, I knew this graduation wasn't just about a diploma. It was about finally telling my story, my way, and watching the truth hit the people who once told me my dreams were just pretty pictures that would never pay the bills. Graduation day arrived. Crisp blue skies arching over Berkeley's Memorial Stadium, sunlight glinting off thousands of black caps and gowns rippling in the breeze. My heart pounded so hard I thought the microphone might pick it up. All around me, families were clustered in tight circles, hugging, snapping photos, laughing over shared memories. I spotted Chloe right away, standing beside Mom and Dad. They'd shown up decked out like they were attending the Oscars. Dad in his navy suit, Mom in a flowery dress with a matching hat. Chloe beaming, her gold honor cords draped around her neck. I hovered near the fringes, unseen, clutching my speech notes so tightly the paper crumpled in my fist. Chloe saw me and waved, "Jess, you made it." Her voice was bright, but there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. I managed a half smile, trying not to crumble under the weight of everything unsaid between us. We lined up in alphabetical order, the sea of graduates shifting and murmuring like a living creature. Then the brass band kicked in, pomp and circumstance swelling through the stadium as we filed in, 2 by 2. As I passed the front rows, I caught Dad glancing around, his eyes following Chloe, a proud grin stretching across his face. When he finally looked at me, it was like he was trying to remember who I was. I swallowed hard, reminding myself, just wait. The ceremony moved in a blur. Speeches, applause, degrees conferred. Until finally, the dean stepped up to the mic. Today, we have the honor of hearing from a truly remarkable graduate, a student who embodies resilience, innovation, and the entrepreneurial spirit that defines Berkeley. A hush fell over the crowd. My name echoed through the stadium. Please welcome Jessica Carter. I climbed the steps, my legs trembling, my vision blurring as I scanned the thousands of faces staring up at me. Mom's mouth fell open in shock. Dad's smile froze, like someone pressed pause on a remote. I took a deep breath and started to speak. 4 years ago, I arrived at this campus with a busted laptop, 3 suitcases, and not a dime of help from my family. I worked 70, sometimes 80 hours a week, pouring coffee, studying business, and building my own digital art business from scratch. I was told art won't pay the bills, that my ideas were risky at best. But today, I stand here, debt-free, running a $500,000 agency, and being featured in Forbes 30 under 30. The audience erupted in applause, cheers echoing off the stadium walls. But I held up a hand, waiting for silence. "There's something else you should know." I turned my eyes directly toward my parents, their faces pale as paper. I built all of it, without a single dollar of financial support from my family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I pressed on, voice steady. "I'm not telling you this for pity or praise. I'm telling you because sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the very reason you find out how strong you really are." Another wave of applause crashed over me. In the front row, Mom blinked back tears. Dad stared at the ground, jaw clenched. Chloe stood up, clapping so hard her palms turned red, tears streaming down her cheeks. The dean stepped forward again, voice booming. "And today, we are proud to announce that Jessica Carter has graduated as this year's valedictorian with a perfect 4.0 GPA and has built a business valued at over $500,000. Thunderous applause exploded around me. My parents' expressions shifted from shock to something close to shame, because in that moment, the entire stadium knew the truth, that the daughter they'd called too risky had just become the pride of an entire university. After the ceremony, the stadium emptied into chaos, hugs and flowers and families piling into every open patch of grass. I felt like I was floating, my ears ringing from the applause still echoing in my skull. Chloe found me first, her eyes shiny with tears. "Oh my God, Jess, I had no idea. I'm so proud of you." She wrapped me in a hug so fierce it nearly knocked the breath out of me. And for the first time, it didn't feel awkward. It felt real. But then, I saw Mom and Dad lingering a few feet away. Stiff, unsure, like strangers in their own daughter's story. Dad cleared his throat. "So, you've been busy." His voice tried for casual, but it cracked on the last word. I just stared at him, searching his eyes for even a flicker of the pride he'd always showered on Chloe. Mom reached for my arm. "Jessica, why didn't you tell us about any of this?" I blinked, laughter bubbling in my chest, sharp and bitter. "Why would I?" "You made it pretty clear what you thought of my risky ideas." Dad lifted his hands in a helpless gesture. We thought we were making the right investment. Chloe seemed like the safer bet." Chloe's voice cut through the air, quiet but shaking. "Mom, Dad, you need to stop. Jess worked harder than anyone I've ever known, and you both treated her like she didn't matter. That's not okay." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Jess. We didn't understand." I felt a storm raging inside me. The child who'd spent years begging for scraps of attention, warring with the woman who no longer needed their validation. I took a shaky breath. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not pretending either. Love shouldn't come with conditions or ROI calculations. Dad's shoulders sagged, as if the weight of the truth finally crushed him. He whispered, "We're proud of you. Jess, truly. You've built something incredible." I nodded, my voice soft. "I know, and I did it without you. But I'm done proving myself. I'm living my life on my terms now." Chloe slipped her hand into mine. "And I'm with you. Always." Mom wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. "Can we start over?" I studied her face. The woman who'd once told me art was just a hobby. Now standing there, stripped of certainty, afraid she might lose her daughter for good. "I don't know if we can start over," I said quietly. "But we can start being honest." And for the first time, Dad didn't have anything to say. He just pulled me into an awkward, lingering hug, as if he'd finally realized he might have been hugging the wrong daughter all those years. As the sun dipped low behind the Berkeley hills, painting the sky in streaks of gold and pink, I stood there beside Chloe, feeling lighter than I had in years. People say revenge is sweet, but the truth is, the real victory is living the life they said you never could. And I want you to hear me when I say this. Your worth was never theirs to define. It's yours, and yours alone, to claim. I spent too many years believing I was a bad investment, that my art was worthless, that my dreams were foolish because they didn't fit inside someone else's idea of success. But here's the thing. Sometimes, the people who doubt you the loudest become the fuel that propels you further than you ever imagined. They push you to dig deeper, to find a version of yourself even you didn't know existed. And when you finally rise, the view is breathtaking. So here's what I've learned. Never let anyone convince you that your vision is too weird, too small, too risky. Bet on yourself, even if you're the only one placing that bet. Because the returns, they're worth more than any number in your bank account. They're measured in freedom, pride, and the quiet knowledge that you built something nobody can take away. Today, I run my own digital agency. I've been featured in Forbes, and I'm starting the Jessica Carter Resilience Fund to help students who, like me, were told they'd never make it. And I'm telling you, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told to play small, I hope you know. Sometimes the very thing that feels like your biggest disadvantage becomes your secret weapon. So keep going, keep fighting. And remember, you don't need permission to be extraordinary. If my story means anything, let it be this. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living free. If you've ever felt like the underdog, drop your story in the comments. And never forget, your value doesn't need permission.